Hello, I'm Bruce Webb. Today we will be conducting the pre-flight check of a BK117 C-2, commonly called an EC145. We will be using the checklist provided in the Rotorcraft Flight Manual. If your helicopter has optional equipment installed, you should refer to the respective flight manual supplement or maintenance manual to determine what additional pre-flight steps may be necessary. The complete pre-flight shall be performed before the first flight of the day. Thereafter, an abbreviated check is acceptable. The items which must be completed for this abbreviated check are identified with an asterisk next to each item on the checklist. Before beginning your pre-flight, ensure that all the required materials and documents are current and present. This, of course, includes your checklist. Also, because distractions are often the source of error, ensure that persons in the vicinity are aware that you are performing a pre-flight check and they should not interrupt you. Finally, remove any items from your person which may introduce FOD to the aircraft. At the same time, I would encourage you to obtain a flashlight, clean rag, and perhaps a small mirror to use during the pre-flight. But remember, these tools may also become FOD, so make certain that you have accounted for these items after you are finished. Okay, let's begin. We'll begin the external portion of the pre-flight check on the right side of the helicopter. The first item on the checklist is the cockpit NACA inlet. It's located just below the pilot door. I'll use my flashlight to shine into the inlet to ensure that it is clear and unobstructed, because this provides the air to the actual instrument panel. Aft of that, we have the ADC temperature probe. We want to make sure that it is clear, unobstructed, undamaged. The shield should be in good repair and able to protect the probe. Just aft of that, we have the OAT temperature probe, which provides information to the VARTOMS monitor box. So again, we want to make sure it's in good repair. While here, we can check the lower portion of the cockpit door to ensure it's undamaged, no delamination, no dents, no dings. We can check the lower hinge to make sure it's in good shape. As we move up the door, we can look at the frame itself, the upper hinge, the upper portion of the frame around the back of the door, checking the window itself, the screws that hold the window in place, make sure they're all in good repair. The window is clean and clear. We can go ahead and open the door to check its function. I'll apply a little load with my right hand, turn the handle with my left hand, release the door, allow it to open. The door itself has a pneumatic extender which will hold it in the open position. I can check the internal portion of the door for any damage. It's an opportunity to check the window to make sure it slides freely, opened and closed. Once we're satisfied the door is in good repair, we'll climb into the helicopter and resume our pre-flight checks in the cockpit. Once we're seated in the cockpit, we can go ahead and turn the battery master switch to the on position. This will allow us to check the lighting, so we'll go ahead and turn the position lights, anti-collision lights, strobe lights, fixed landing light. Go ahead and turn those on. We want to check their function. Be aware that if you want to check the slewable landing light, you'll need to command the emergency shed bus to the on position to check that light. Once you're satisfied that all of the lights function correctly, go ahead and place the emergency shed bus back to the nominal position, shut off the respective lights, and turn the battery switch off. Now we'll go ahead and check the fabric glare shield to ensure it's not torn, that the Velcro and snaps are in good repair. We'll also check the pilot seat and safety belt for condition and function. Once you're satisfied that everything in the cockpit is in condition for safe flight, we'll go ahead and climb out of the helicopter. The next item is the sliding door on the right-hand side of the helicopter. So we'll check the condition and function of the door. First, the general condition of the door, the actual structure itself, to ensure that it is undamaged, no deformation, no delamination, that it's in general good repair. We'll check the entirety of the door frame. We'll check the window itself. This happens to be an emergency exit window for the cabin. So we want to check that the window is clear, clean, unobstructed. The seal is in good condition as well. It's well seated. Then we'll go ahead and open the door to check its function. I'll push in with my right hand, rotate the handle with my left, and the door will open. But before going any further, I would caution you to ensure that these two maintenance steps are not extended. Because if they are extended, the door will collide with the steps and may cause damage to one or both of them. So again, make sure the steps are closed. Once the steps are closed, you're sure of that, and you're opening the door, checking the function, the door should roll smoothly, uniformly on the track. There's actually 3 tracks. There's an external lower track, an internal upper track, and a mid track, which is external. So again, the door should operate smoothly. And the last caution is to be aware that this aft maintenance step should not be an impediment to the door if this stop is in place correctly. And when you're satisfied that everything works, functions correctly, let's go ahead and shut the door. The next item on the checklist is the landing gear and step. We'll begin at the airframe here. We want to check this fitting to make sure where the cross tube connects to the airframe is undamaged. The fitting has no cracks, tooling marks, deformation. We want to ensure that the studs and the attachment hardware here is properly installed, cotter keyed. There's a rubber bushing between the cross tube and this fitting. You want to ensure that the rubber bushing has not been pushed out either side of the fitting, which could be indication of a problem with the landing gear. So no avulsion. You don't want the rubber pushed out either side. It should be uniform on both sides. We want to check the cross tube itself. It should be undamaged. The step should be well attached, secure, undamaged. As we move down, we have this fitting here. I call it a foot. It's what connects the cross tube to the actual skid tube. Again, we should find no damage, no machine marks, no cracks. Additionally, here you will see a bonding braid. It should be attached. There's another one up here connecting the airframe to the cross tube. So the bonding braid should be in good repair. We'll check the skid tube itself to make sure it's undamaged, at least as well as you can. Certainly you can't see the underside of the skid tube, but look as well as you can. On this particular ship, we have a heavy-duty skid shoe. These brackets that hold it in place should all be in good repair. The skid shoe should not be twisted in any way. And finally, these 4 bands should be tight and undamaged as well. Everything we've looked at on the front portion of the landing gear and step resides in the aft portion as well. So we'll continue by checking the aft portion on the right-hand side. Once we're finished checking the landing gear and step, we'll move on. The next item on the checklist is the fuselage right side. This aircraft actually has the fixed provisions for a hoist, so I would ensure that the fittings are well attached, that the covers or the caps for the electrical connectors are secure. Check the rivets to ensure they're not working or smoking. We can check the windows. We have 2 windows, a larger one and a smaller one. We want to check to ensure they're clean, that they're properly installed, there's no damage. While in this general area, we can look at this avionics bay vent to ensure that it is clean, clear, and unobstructed. This actually allows for airflow in the avionics bay and in this half shell where there are a lot of relays and avionics or switches, etc. Again, as we move down, we'll continue to check the rivets. We'll continue to check between the rivet lines for any signs of oil canning. When we get a little bit lower, we can check the transmission and engine deck drains to ensure they're clean, clear, unobstructed. We also have a static port vent here, which should be capped. Just forward of the aft cross tube, we have a fuel vent. That should be clear and unobstructed. And finally, more forward on the underside of the helicopter, we have an antenna. We want to ensure that it is in good condition as well. The next item on the checklist is to check the upper portion of the pilot's windscreen to ensure it is clean, clear, undamaged. While in this area, it's also a good opportunity to check the windshield wiper for its condition, that it is stowed between the two windscreens, and that the actual rubber blade is soft and malleable, not brittle. Next on the checklist is the air intake here, this NACA inlet. This provides air to the cabin in the back of the helicopter. We want to make sure that it is clear and unobstructed. And because this helicopter is equipped with a wire strike protection system, we'll check this upper cutter to make sure it is in good condition and it is secure. Just behind the wire strike cutter is an antenna. We want to ensure that it is in good condition as well. The next item on the checklist is the hydraulic system. So we have two reservoirs. We have the number one reservoir, number one system here. The number two reservoir and system sits just aft of the number one. So everything that I'm describing on number one would need to be done on number two as well. We would check to ensure that the fluid quantity or the volume of fluid is sufficient by ensuring that this pin is extended beyond the min line. We would also check to ensure that the sight glass here is at least 50% filled with fluid. That indicates to us that there is no air in the system. We'll check just the overall condition of the reservoirs. The electrical connections should be tight. All the pipes and fittings should be secure. There should be no contaminants, no fluid, no debris, no FOD. So take your time and look closely. I also look at the SEMAs, the Smart Electrical Mechanical Actuators, and their connections, their control rods here. All of this area, it just takes a few minutes to look closely. Take your time. When you're satisfied that system number one and system number two and the area are in good condition, we can go ahead and close up this access panel and move on. Now we'll check in this area to ensure that the oil cooler inlet screen is clear, unobstructed, undamaged. Of course, the oil cooler blower itself should be undamaged. Below the oil cooler blower, we'll find the hydraulic pump. So we want to ensure it's secure, no damage, no drips, no leaks. And then a little further back, we can actually see the sight glass for the main rotor transmission, and we can see that the oil level is between the min and the max line. Before leaving this general area, ensure there's no foreign objects, no debris, no fluid leaking, things of that nature. Once we're satisfied it's in good condition, we can move on. The next item on the checklist is the transmission area. So first, I would suggest we just take a close look in the general vicinity of this entire area. So we're looking for any debris, any FOD, loose objects, oil, leaks, things of that nature. So just take a big general overview first. Once you're satisfied with that, let's look at some items specifically. We'll start with the oil cooler inlet duct. So with a flashlight, we'll shine through this small access door in the ductwork. We can look forward to ensure that there is nothing occluding or impeding airflow into the oil cooler. Sometimes you'll see some grass or leaves or things like that that have been collected on the screen in the ductwork, so look there closely. We can also look aft towards the front face of the oil cooler to ensure, again, it has no debris on the face of the oil cooler. On the back of the oil cooler, again, we can look to ensure it is clean, clear, and unobstructed as well. We'll now look at the oil cooler itself. You'll notice that it has some foam surrounding it, so we want to make sure that foam is in good repair, that it encases the entirety of the oil cooler. Be aware that on this helicopter, the oil cooler actually plugs into the main rotor transmission. What that means is there are no external lines. There are some pipes which connect the oil cooler to the transmission, but there are no external lines or hoses. So any external line or hose you see in this area is actually an engine oil line. So we do want to check the oil cooler itself to make sure there are no leaks, no damage to the oil cooler. Below the oil cooler, we can see the engine oil reservoir. We want to check to ensure the volume of oil is correct, that it's between the min and the max line in the window. So we'll check the volume of fluid. We'll also check that the oil tank itself is securely attached, undamaged, and that the cap is installed correctly and seated. We can now look at the firewall between the transmission and the engine, and we can look to see that the opening which allows air to flow into the starter generator is clear and unobstructed. Just above that is a larger inlet, that is the engine air inlet and screen. Again, we want to make sure that is clean, clear, unobstructed. We'll take a look at the main rotor transmission itself to ensure it's undamaged. All the bolts are installed, all the hardware's there, nothing looks amiss, that the actual filler cap is installed, and that there are no leaks. We'll also check the oil filter clogging indicator pin, which resides between the oil cooler itself and the main rotor transmission. It's difficult to see without a mirror, but I typically reach in and just feel with my hand to ensure that the pin is not extended. So check that. The main transmission has 4 vertical load struts, one on each corner, so to speak. So we'll check the 2 on the right-hand side, 1 forward, 1 aft. We want to check those for condition, security, no tooling marks, that everything is in good order and very secure. We'll also check the mixing lever assembly, which is located at the front of the transmission. So we want to check that mixing lever assembly and the control rods and the rod end bearings and things of that nature, all the fittings and hardware to ensure they're in good condition as well. Just outboard of that, so closer to the outside of the helicopter, we can also find the rotor brake reservoir, a small reservoir. We want to check to ensure that there is no leaks, that the cap is installed correctly, and the volume in the reservoir is correct. Just below that, we'll find the thermostatic valve. That's a valve which opens and closes to allow engine oil to enter the oil cooler. So we want to check that it is undamaged and there are no leaks. And finally, before closing the panel here and leaving this area, we want to check to ensure that the air opening in the actual transmission door is clear and unobstructed. There is this small vent. This allows the air from the oil cooler to be expelled overboard without any interference. So check that as well. When we're finished, we can close the transmission access door and then move on. Let's continue now in the engine compartment on the right-hand side. We want to look in this general area for condition and security. Of course, we don't want to find any oil leaks. We don't want any fuel leaks. We don't want any debris, no FOD. I would encourage you to look closely at the bleed valve at the top of the engine to ensure that the bleed valve ductwork is on the valve itself and on the cowling, and the clamps are in good repair and position. This is an area where if that ductwork comes off, bleed air will then be recirculated inside the engine cowling area. I would encourage you to look closely at the oil lines, ducts, hoses, fuel lines, air lines. Just again, condition and security of all of those items. Touch, feel, make sure that they are in good repair. Also, wires, linkages, things of that nature. Make sure there is no chafing of wires, no fretting of lines. We'll also check that the exhaust pipe is well attached and secure, undamaged. We'll look at the oil ducts, the rear bearing oil ducts, again, to check that they're well attached, no leakage. We'll look at the engine mounts themselves. There are 3, 2 in the front and 1 in the back. We'll check to make sure they are in good condition and secure. We'll also check the 3 fire detectors to ensure they're in proper placement and the wires are connected correctly. They're in good condition. And finally, we'll check the engine drive shaft, the drive shaft which connects the engine to the transmission. We will check the circumference of the shaft itself to make sure there are no tooling marks, no dents, no dings. It remains undamaged. Also look closely to ensure the 4 studs which hold it in position are tight and the slippage marks are intact. I would encourage you to rotate that shaft one direction to check the freewheeling unit. It will roll freely in one direction and the blades will not turn. And then you can roll it the other direction. It's more difficult, but you can turn it the other direction just a little bit and you will see the main rotor blades do turn. So when you're finished in this area, go ahead and close the access door and then we'll move on. We'll resume our pre-flight check now up at the rotor head. We'll begin at the swash plate. So we'll check the stationary and the rotating swash plate for condition and security. We'll also check the control rods. There are 4 control rods, 1 for each blade. So the control rod goes from the rotating swash plate up to the pitch horn on the rotor head. So we'll check to make sure each of those control rods are in good condition, undamaged, secure. They're free to rotate. We'll also check the spherical bearings on the top and bottom of that control rod, again, to ensure they have freedom to rotate but not excessive play. Additionally, we'll check the safety wire on those to ensure they're secure. We'll also check the oil level in the rotor head itself. It should be between the min and the max line. We'll check the primary and secondary blade attach bolts. The larger one is the primary. The one on the trailing edge is the secondary bolt. We want to ensure that they're in good condition and secure. Additionally, we'll look at the hubcap in this area. On top of the rotor system, there are 8 studs which hold it into position. We want to check each one of those to make sure that there's no damage, there's no cracking, and that they're properly safetied. We'll check the drive link on the swash plate to ensure that the drive link and the hardware is installed correctly. The vibration dampeners, we have 4 sets of vibration dampeners. We want to make sure they're in good condition, they're secure. The rotor blades themselves, of course we have 4. We want to look down the top of the blade, the bottom of the blade, the leading edge, the trailing edge to check for condition, no damage. Additionally, we'll look at the PU tape on the leading edge of each blade and the nickel erosion strip to make sure that it is correctly installed, undamaged. At the end of the blades, we'll check to ensure the trim tabs are in good condition and that the static wicks, 1 per blade, are in position as well. I will also take time to look at the 12 studs and the nuts which hold the rotor head onto the drive shaft or the mast. Make sure that they are all in good condition and that they're secure. So they should be safetied nut to stud, so ensure that they're correctly safetied. I typically check everything on 1 blade or 1 star area, like the primary bolt, the secondary bolt, the static wicks, all the hardware. Then I rotate the blade and I do the subsequent one until I've done all 4 blades. When you're satisfied everything is in good working order, go ahead and climb down and we'll resume. Now we'll check the external power unit access door. located on the right side of the airframe near the clamshell doors on the right side. So we'll go ahead and open the EPU door. Here we can see the actual receptacle, the circuit breaker for the external power, the micro switch for the door itself, and finally the headset plug. Should you need to use an external power unit, please turn the aircraft battery on first, then turn the EPU on and energize the plug. Open the external power unit door. With the plug energized, place it inside the receptacle. Then do whatever you need to do with the EPU. When you're finished, leave the EPU energized, remove the plug, then close the EPU door and shut off the external power unit. Let's resume on the right side of the fuselage. We'll check the static ports. We have 2 static ports located here. We want to ensure that they are clear and unobstructed. We'll also look at this aft engine cowling. We want to look at the entirety of the cowling to ensure that it is undamaged, that it is properly installed, that all the fasteners are in place, that it's secure. Once we're satisfied with that, we can go ahead and open the battery door. We'll check the battery. We'll check the battery connector to ensure that it is securely connected to the battery. I'll typically grasp the battery and jostle it a bit to ensure that it is secure in its mounting. Additionally, we want to look to see that there is no electrolyte, no fluid spilled from the battery in this area. Once you're convinced everything here is in good condition, we'll go ahead and shut the battery door. We'll move slightly aft from there, and we'll come to the fire extinguisher bottles. We have 2 bottles. We can see the pressure of each bottle in these viewing windows. Compare the pressures on the individual bottles against this table, which takes the outside air temperature, compares it against the pressure in the bottle, and tells you what the pressure should be. So again, you want to ensure the bottles are correctly serviced, and this is how you do that. Additionally, you want to look at this red burst indicator, this disc, to make sure it's undamaged and in good order. Finally, we'll look up to the number 2 engine exhaust nozzle. We want to make sure that the nozzle is in good condition, it's secure, no damage, no FOD, no debris in that area. When you're satisfied that everything there and in this area is in good condition, we'll move on to the next item. Now we've arrived at the clamshell doors. Before opening the doors, let's look at the external portion of the doors first. We'll look at the general condition of the doors, both the right-hand and the left-hand clamshell door, to ensure there's no mechanical damage, no punctures, no dents, dings, cracks, things of that nature. There's an upper and a lower hinge on each door. We want to check that the hinges, both the airframe and the door portion of the hinges, are undamaged, no cracks, no damage at all. Once we've accomplished that on both doors externally, we can go ahead and open the door. So we'll bend down. I'll release the bottom latch, the middle latch, finally the upper latch. The pneumatic door struts will open and hold the doors in the open position. So of course we want to check to ensure they do this correctly. They're undamaged. We can now check the interior portion of each clamshell door for damage. We can check the door seal, which runs the perimeter of each door to ensure it is adhered correctly and in proper position. On the left-hand side, the port side clamshell door, there is also a first aid kit. We want to ensure that it is in position. Once we're comfortable that the doors are in good repair, take a moment to look at the actual floor to ensure nothing is extending out of the aircraft into the doors when they close. Additionally, look at the This panel, this upper panel here, that's the avionics bay. It's held closed by 3 fasteners on the right side, 3 on the left, and then 1 latch in the back. So make sure that they're all snug and holding that panel in place firmly. Once we're satisfied all of that is okay, we'll go ahead and close the clamshell doors. Again, I'll start at the bottom. I'll latch the bottom while holding my thumb to keep the doors uniform. So I'll latch the bottom, the middle, and the top latch. Once again, double checking, nothing's extending out of the airframe. Once we've done that, we can continue on to the next item. Now we're on the right-hand side of the tail boom. We'll first look at the general condition of the tail boom on the bottom, on the side, on the top. We want to make sure there's no dents, dings, deformation, any damage at all on the tail boom. We'll look at the rivets themselves to ensure we don't have any working rivets or any smoking rivets. We'll check the antennae, like the VOR antenna or the rad-out antenna, to make sure they are in good condition. We can also check the horizontal stabilizer on the right-hand side to ensure it is installed correctly and that it is secure and undamaged. The vertical fin as well, we want to check to ensure that it is undamaged and in good condition. And at the end of the horizontal stabilizer, outside of the vertical fin, we want to ensure that the position light is in good condition. Finally, before leaving this area, we'll look at the tail skid. We want to ensure that it is undamaged, that it is secure. Pay attention to the sealant between the attached frames, the forward and the rear attached frames, and the skid itself to ensure that that sealant is in good condition, because this holds the tail skid firmly in place, stopping any kind of vibration. So once we're satisfied that these items are in good repair, we can continue. The next area to be checked is the tail rotor gearbox. As we're climbing up to look in this area, I would encourage you to look at the right-hand side of the vertical fin to check we don't have any cracks, no working rivets, no damage on the vertical fin or the fairing. Once we arrive at the tail rotor gearbox, I typically grasp the tail rotor gearbox and jostle it a bit. It allows the fluid level to be seen clearly in the window. We're also checking to ensure that the filler cap is securely attached and that there's no leaks in this area. You will often find grease from the various grease zerks, but there should be no fluid, no oil leaks here. I also, while jostling the gearbox, will do it just a little more vigorously, checking to ensure the gearbox itself is well attached to the vertical fin. I'll also check the anti-collision light. There is an antenna just forward of the anti-collision light on this aircraft. I'll check it for security, and the position light as well. Additionally, I'll use a flashlight and I'll look down inside the fairing here, and I can see the actual tail rotor drive shaft. I can look at some of the hardware. Once finished here, I'll start to move outboard on the tail rotor assembly. So I'll check to make sure these rubber bellows, there's a larger one here and a smaller one here. We want to make sure they're undamaged, they're in good condition, they're not torn. We'll check the T-bolt here. There's a pin which is held in place with 2 studs. We want to ensure that that T-bolt is secure and does not have excessive play. We'll actually check then the tail rotor drive shaft, the tail rotor head, the pitch change links, and the bearings, the inner and outer bearings on each pitch change link. These are areas of high wear, so take a close look there to ensure they're in good order, they're in good condition. I'll take a close look at the tail rotor blades themselves, the leading edge, trailing edge. Typically I run my hand down each individual blade. There are 2 bolts which hold the blade to the blade fork. I'll check those bolts to ensure that they are installed correctly. including the balance weights, which are located on the outboard portion of these two blade bolts. Of course, the fork itself we'll check, and the bolt, the single bolt which holds the blade fork to the TT strap, the torsion tension strap, which runs through the center of this assembly to the other blade fork. And again, we'll check that one to ensure that the bolts are all in good condition. They're properly cotter keyed, and the balance weights are tight here as well. There are 4 dynamic weights, 2 at the base of each tail rotor fork. We want to make sure those are tight, secure, not loose. Finally, in this area, I will put my thumb up on the teeter bolt, and I'll put 1 or 2 fingers at the other end of that teeter bolt, and I will move the blade fore and aft like this. And what I'm doing is I'm feeling for any pinching in the bearing areas, these teeter bearings. So if while doing that you feel pinching either at your thumb or at your fingers, it could be an indication you have excessive play on those teeter bearings. Additionally, I'll take a moment and I'll shine a light at each end of that teeter bearing, and I'll ensure that the bolt actually moves with the inner race of the bearing. If these bearings are mis-shimmed, it is possible that the bolt will move and the bearing will not, in which case that's incorrect. So take a moment, look to ensure that the fork bolt moves with the inner race of the bearing, and also that the outer race does not move. As we climb down, let's take a moment to look at the left side of the vertical fin and the cowling, just as we did on the right side when we climbed up. On the left side, however, we will find the intermediate gearbox access louvered area. Here we want to check the oil level. Often it's easiest just to jostle the helicopter a little bit and you can see the oil in the viewing window. Additionally, I'll shine a light into the louvered area to check to ensure there's no leakage from the gearbox. As we resume our pre-flight checks on the left side of the helicopter, because many of the items we check on the right side are duplicated on the left side, in such cases we won't go into the same detail on the left side of the helicopter. We will highlight areas which are different and we'll go into the detail necessary. This should not imply that the fidelity of the pre-flight check on the left side is less than the right side. We're simply doing this for brevity for the video. The next item is the horizontal stabilizer. We want to check its condition and security. So I'll typically grasp the stabilizer and shake it just a little bit to ensure that the fitting, the bolts, the security to the tail boom is good. Also on this stabilizer, there is a gurney flap running the length of the horizontal stabilizer on top of the trailing edge. It extends vertically. This is an area that can pose a trap for FOD like flashlights, tools, etc. So I would encourage you to run your hand there to ensure there's no debris or look visually. Additionally, we'll check the vertical fin, which is attached to the horizontal stabilizer, for condition and security, and the position light, which resides on the outboard portion of that fin as well. And we'll check the tail boom, the tail rotor drive shaft cover, and the antenna on the left side, just like we did on the right side. We'll continue our checks with the left hand or the number 1 engine exhaust pipe. We want to make sure it's in good condition, no FOD, no debris in that area. We'll also check the left-hand aft engine cowling to ensure it's in good condition, it's securely attached, undamaged. Additionally, we'll check the 2 static ports on the left side of the aircraft to ensure they're clear and unobstructed. Something unique on this side of the helicopter is the air conditioning condensers located here. We want to ensure that these screens are clear and unobstructed. We'll continue with the left-hand engine, the number 1 engine. We want to check this area just as we did on the right-hand side. So just general condition and security. of the engine itself, the lines, pipes, hoses, fittings, connectors, wires, absence of leaks. We would pay special attention perhaps to the engine drive shaft to make sure it is undamaged, that we can rotate it one direction freely to check the freewheeling unit. That also gives us the opportunity to look at the complete circumference of the drive shaft to ensure it's undamaged, no machine marks, no dents, no dings. The bleed valve as well, we want to make sure that hose is in place. General condition and security. When we're satisfied everything here is in good condition, we'll go ahead and close the door and move on to the left-hand transmission bay. We'll continue with the left-hand side of the transmission. We're going to look in this area just as we did on the right-hand side. So we're looking at the general condition, security, lack of fluids, no damage in this area, no FOD. So take a few minutes, look carefully. Don't forget to check the engine oil level to make sure it's between the min and the max line, as well that the cap is secure. And the oil filter clogging indicator pin. Remember, it's kind of hidden, so you have to reach back to feel it. So ensure that that pin is retracted. Once you're comfortable everything is in good order, we'll move on. Before looking at the left-hand side of the hydraulic system, let's take a few moments to look at the oil cooler inlet screen, the actual oil cooler fan itself, the oil cooler shroud. Below that, the hydraulic pump and the lines associated with that. We want to ensure the area is clean, unobstructed, no FOD, no leaks. Additionally, it's a great opportunity to take a closer look at the mixing lever assembly. Now let's take a close look on the left-hand side of the hydraulic compartment. Here we can get a better view of the actual hydraulic actuators because they're not blocked by the reservoir. So we can see those better. We can see the other side of the seams very well. We can see all the electrical connectors. We can check for absence of FOD, absence of leakage, etc. So take a moment to look from this perspective as well. When you're finished, we'll close this compartment and move on. Before climbing down, this is an excellent opportunity to look at the upper portion of the co-pilot's windscreen, the windshield wiper, and the left side of the wire strike cutter. As we move forward on the left side of the fuselage, we want to check many of the same items just like we did on the right side. We'll check the avionic bay cooling vent to ensure it is clear, unobstructed. We'll check the airframe itself, the side of the fuselage, to ensure there's no mechanical damage, no dents, no working rivets, no oil canning between the rivet lines. We'll check the windows to ensure they're clean and undamaged. We'll check the engine and transmission deck drains to ensure they're clear, unobstructed. In that same area, we have the static port drain. It should be capped. Forward of there, we have a fuel vent on the left side. That should be clear and unobstructed as well. More forward, we find a couple of antennae on the lower side of the fuselage. We want to ensure that they are undamaged and in good condition. Something which is unique to the left side of the helicopter, the port side of the helicopter, is the fuel filler door. So we'll go ahead and open the door. We have a fuel filler cap. We want to ensure the cap is secure. We can then shut the door, latch it, and move on. Let's go ahead and look at the landing gear and step. Just like we did on the right side, we'll ensure that the actual cross tube, the step, the skid tube, the attachment hardware, the fittings, everything is undamaged. We'll do that in the aft portion and the forward portion of the landing gear on this side. When you're comfortable everything here is in good condition and secure, we can move on. Now let's check the doors on the left side of the helicopter. We're going to check the condition and function of the sliding door and the co-pilot's door in the same way that we checked them on the right-hand side of the helicopter. So we'll go ahead and open the door, to ensure that it operates smoothly and freely. We'll shut this door. We can move forward to the co-pilot door. Again, we'll check the condition and function of this door in the very same way we checked on the right-hand side. Additionally, we'll check the seat on this side of the helicopter to include the belts. Be aware that if there's going to be no occupant in the left front seat of the helicopter, then the seat belt should be buckled. Once we're satisfied that everything here is in good condition, we can shut the door. We'll now check the two OAT sensors located just below the co-pilot's door on the underside of the helicopter. We'll check them for condition and security, as well as the condition of the air data computer temp probe and the shield which surrounds it. We'll also look in the NACA cockpit air intake to ensure that it is clear and unobstructed. And finally, any antennas on the underside, we want to ensure that they are in good condition as well. We've arrived at the nose area. Here we will check the windscreens, both the co-pilot and pilot windscreens, the upper and lower portion for cleanliness, condition. We'll also check the pitot tubes on the co-pilot and pilot side for condition, security, that they are unobstructed. We'll check the windshield wiper to ensure it's in good condition, undamaged, and that it is parked between the two windscreens. We'll check the pedal area on both sides of the helicopter to ensure there's no impediment, no debris, no FOD in this area. We'll check the landing lights to ensure they are secure and in good condition. Finally, we'll check the underside of the helicopter to ensure there's no damage. When we're satisfied that everything is in good order, the pilot's pre-flight is complete. This completes the exterior portion of the pre-flight check. In some areas, we went into greater detail than the pre-flight check requires. We're hopeful that the additional information may be useful. Until next time, resume OWN navigation.